You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Birds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got some family here. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the It My Cast podcast. Joining me today is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
Human work.
And
Work. Oh man, you're doing better than me.
and also joining me is Brad Gullickson, the birthday boy, mouth dork.
She makes a good pie, but she's still a bad person.
And I am your host today, Brian Young, the turtle dork. Give Frost a message from me. It's open season on all suckheads.
Oh,
Nice.
And this is the It My Cast podcast. I think I just said that.
You
I don't
did.
know. I don't know how Darren does these things.
No, this is good. This
No,
is
I
good.
think repetition is good. People need to know. They might have zoned out the first couple of seconds.
You're right. They definitely could have. How's everybody doing? It's
Great.
a special day today.
Yeah.
We are recording from Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester for our still awesome screening of Blade.
The first birthday of Still Awesome.
The first birthday of Still Awesome.
12
Yes.
movies.
Our little baby.
Yes, it is
It's a
also
year-old.
a birthday for Mouth Dork.
Our big baby.
Oh,
is 40 years old.
40 years old. So old. Yes.
How you feeling today, man?
It's weird. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't really have an issue when I turned 30. I certainly didn't have an issue when I turned 10 or 20. But for some reason, like the last couple of days, I felt like a little funky.
He did wake up on the sad side of the bed this morning.
A little bit.
Okay.
I mean,
But
I
then-
didn't have any sleep last night. I was obsessed. Well, this is going to be part of my Wicked Dork.
Okay.
But I was watching a lot of Mindhunter season 2.
Which I think gets the person in the right spirits.
No, it does not.
Get
No,
a
it
really
does
good
not.
headspace.
No. I fell asleep on the floor, and like I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning, and Mindhunter was still going on, and I was like, it's still awful.
Oh,
And then, of course,
wow.
like, I have to get up for work at 6, so I'm like, happy birthday, I love you. And he's like,
I know.
it's your day.
But I'm so excited to be here at the Draft House, and I'm
Yes.
so excited to be screening Blade. I think we're going to have the largest crowd we've ever had for
That's
a Still
cool.
Awesome screening tonight. We're at 50 people right now, and we're going to do the group photo. And talking about quotes, Brian, I want to run this by you.
Okay.
This is what I want the crowd to scream.
I was going to ask you about that.
I want the crowd to scream, some motherfuckers always ice skate uphill.
Ooh, are they going to be able to get 50 people in unison to say that correctly?
We're going to try. And no, I probably just messed it up again because for some reason I can never say that quote properly. But I want to get video of 50 people trying to
Okay.
say that.
And
Nice.
It's an R-rated movie. It's an R-rated crowd. We can have them say
Oh, yeah.
motherfuckers. That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I'm most excited about tonight is getting everyone to say that. Our listeners can go to our Instagram and Facebook page, and
Yes.
hopefully they'll see a video of 50 people screaming that. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we're going to see. We're going to see.
let's tag Wesley on that if
Oh,
we can.
I've been trying to tag Wesley on many things. I've emailed Wesley. I've heard nothing back from that guy. He's ghosted us.
Probably. You know, he's busy promoting Dolomite is my name, and he's coming to America, the sequel. He's prepping for. So he's a busy guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. He's making up for lost time, lost jail time.
I was about to say, like, it's almost the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
He is getting his shit together. Is what he's doing right now.
Got to.
But he looks great in Dolomite is my name.
He does. I'm so looking forward to
Yeah.
that, man. So looking forward to that. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm happy for you. I definitely know where you're coming from as far as the 40. I was there last year.
Yeah.
Like leading up to my 40th, I was kind of having those same type of anxieties. So believe me, you're not alone. I know what you're
You
feeling.
seem to be doing okay.
I'm doing good. You just got to to realize that it's never too late for whatever it is that you want to do in your life. Because I get that feeling when you turn 40, you start looking back, thinking, am I where I want to be?
Yeah.
And those are the things I was dealing with and struggling with. But
in my head right now, I have Stanley and Jack Kirby created the Marvel Universe when they were 44.
There you go.
I've got 4 years to create my Marvel Universe.
Well, I was
You're
going
doing
through my iPhone photos, and you know how you can just like click a face and they'll like make a little video of like, and so I made like a little video of Brad's face, and I was like watching it in the car and like getting a little choked up, and then I'm like, oh my God, Brad's memorial video is halfway done.
You're a monster.
You're very handsome.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's get into our week's In Dork.
Yes, please.
Lisa, we'll start with you this time since Mr. Darren Smith isn't joining us for this episode. So let us know what your week in Dork was like this past week.
Well, I started my week in Dork watching Tiffany Haddish's new series on Netflix. So I've been listening to comedians on their individual podcasts, like complaining about how they're giving celebrities who are not necessarily stand-ups or not necessarily stand-ups anymore comedy specials. And what Tiffany Haddish, she's an actress. Mm-hmm. She's not really a stand-up. She's a wonderful performer, and I am hugely on board.
She's funny as hell.
She's hilarious, and I'm hugely on board with her. But what she's decided to do with her Netflix opportunity is she created a series where she is supporting female stand-ups of color by giving them, it's 6 women, all doing, who I have not heard of, all doing stand-up specials. And the first one I thought was so impeccable. Oh, and the series is called They Ready.
Okay.
And I love it.
Hearing about this.
So she opens each episode with like a little interview with her and the comedian and what it's like to really be hacking it on the road or whatever, and they talk, of course, glowingly about Tiffany Haddish because she is an angel on earth. Yeah. And the theme is that as Tiffany Haddish was going for her own stardom and pursuing her dream, she was meeting these women and giving them this promise of,
oh, nice.
When I get there, when I get to fame and fortune, I'm reaching back for you.
Bring them along.
And I love that. And that's exactly what she's doing. Yeah. And me, as a comedy fan, I super appreciate it. So now I'm largely on board with comedian Tracy Ashley.
So funny.
Me and Brad were like falling over.
So funny.
Laughing.
So is each episode focusing on each individual?
It's just 6 stand-up specials.
6 stand-up. Okay,
yeah.
That's right. Okay.
And Tiffany Haddish comes out and she introduces the stand-up.
Yeah.
And there's like a little banter there back and forth.
Yeah.
But it's primarily just like watching 6 stand-up specials.
Okay, that's
so
cool.
The Tracy Ashley, you get the sense she's a big-time road comic. She is hilarious. She does bits about food. She does bits about her family.
Her husband.
And she loves talking about, she's in an interracial marriage, and so she loves to talk about the hijinks that come with being married to one of ours. We're awkward. So I thought that she was so funny. Also, she had Flame Monroe, who is a trans woman of color.
Okay.
Ida Rodriguez, who has an interesting story. She was at one time homeless.
Oh, wow.
And raising her kids, and she was like, I'm doing an open mic while living out of her car. So these people, I've only watched those 3.
Okay.
Tracy Ashley was by far my favorite.
Was that the first episode?
Yeah. That was the very first one, and you should watch it. I would love to get your impression
on it.
I just thought she was so funny, and I'm going to be following that woman.
But like to your point, Lisa, it's just so cool that Tiffany Haddish has like set up this platform for other talented people. Awesome.
Like when she gets an opportunity, the first thing she does is think of others. Like that's amazing.
Very cool. Absolutely.
So I think that's awesome. Also, I mentioned last week this comic that I was reading, madly in love with. I have now finished it. Donnie Cates' God Country. It's a graphic novel about this guy. He is taking care of his father, who has Alzheimer's, and he's become very ornery, and he's been upsetting the police have had to be called because of his violent outbreaks.
It's still Alice for the first 10 pages.
Right. And the son, he has a wife and a daughter who have never known Emmett, that's the father's name, when he was himself. When he wasn't riddled with this disease.
So they've only known him since he's had...
Exactly. And there's this just completely out of the blue tornado that flattens the house. But when that happens, this demon comes out of the tornado, and a sword falls out of the sky into Emmett's hand. Emmett slays the demon, and as he's holding this sword, his disease is gone. He's completely restored. And it's just, and obviously this sword is imbued with magical powers. It has this history.
Well, it's the first sword, and it's the god of swords.
Right.
So if you've ever been stabbed or stabbed somebody with a sword, it's connected to this sword. So an Excalibur is an extension of this sword. The Green Destiny is an extension of this sword.
And it's a sentient and talking sword that chose Emmett for a reason. But the son of the god who created the sword wants it back. And Emmett's like,
no,
I'm you. And meanwhile, it's not like he's using this sword to murder people or wage war. He's using this sword so he can play with his granddaughter.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's a tearjerker.
It's so good. It's from Donnie Cates and Jeff Shaw, who did...
the art is stunning.
Yeah, Thanos Wins, which we've talked about on this podcast before. It's like my favorite.
We made
Thanos
Darren
comic.
read it.
We made Darren read it. They're also currently doing Guardians of the Galaxy together, and this is the first project they ever did. But it does not read like a first project. It feels like, out of the box great.
Wow.
Right. So I highly recommend that. I have just started another comic. So since it's Brad's birthday, we do Brad's birthday things, which is going to a comic book store. We went out to Victory Comics
in Falls Church.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a cute little store. They're attached to a game store. But my favorite thing to do when I'm in a comic book store,
when I've trapped Lisa in a comic book store,
is to because I don't shop well without a list. Brad is an amazing browser, and he can just look at shelves. But I'm like, if I'm not looking for anything, I can't stare at them.
I'm the same way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially in the grocery store.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
I need a list.
Browsing is like my favorite hobby, but there are so few places to browse now. I know every single employee at a Barnes & Noble, so I can't go to a Barnes & Noble without it being like social time. So I don't browse Barnes & Nobles anymore.
Okay.
So that leaves me with comic book stores and ABC shops, and I love browsing both of them.
He does.
Okay.
So what I like to do is when we're in the comic book store, I will go on Amazon and go like, okay, well, I loved Manfred the Man.
Okay.
Which is, I talked about it in one of my previous weeks in Dork, a little indie comic about where the roles of cat and man are reversed. So the cat is the human and the man wears no pants. It's so cute. So then I go through what customers also bought, and then I've just slowly been buying those things. So I found this comic called Upgrade Soul, and it's kind of a science fiction comic. I'm about 3 issues in, and it's left me with... It started with a beautiful story about this young girl. She goes and hangs with her great aunt, who was a scientist. So they like to run experiments together. And the girl has a pet rat that she loves, and the girl doesn't want to leave her aunt's house because she's so cool, and she wants to be a scientist just like her. But then Molly, who's the doctor, and her husband Hank have been looking into this I guess, medical procedure where they can take their DNA and upgrade it so that, because, like, I've gone through the issue where the doctor who invented this procedure is, like, trying to sell it to them, and the way he says it is, like, our DNA is loaded with all of this baggage of disease, whatever, weakness, whatever. Then, as we live our lives because of the state of our environment, then we impose things onto ourselves that are not necessarily ideal. We don't take care of ourselves. We suffer personal and emotional failures. We don't meet our own expectations. So the idea of this procedure is they can take your DNA and then essentially take all of the baggage off so that you can be your best iteration of your DNA is the idea.
Okay.
And so where I've gotten to it in the comic, and this is, if you don't want to hear what happens next, this is in the description. This is in the description of the, if you read any plot summary, but they come out looking hideous, monstrous after their DNA has been upgraded.
Yeah.
But that isn't the thing that has blown my mind 3 issues into this comic. I am riveted.
Interesting.
And
it looks like the art is is compelling.
Wow.
It's really beautiful. It doesn't look like anything I've seen before. I'm trying to look for the name of the award that
the Dwayne McDuffie Award
for diversity in comics.
Yeah. Dwayne McDuffie is one of the guys who kicked off Milestone Comics back in the late 90s, where Static Shock came from and all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Dennis Corwin and guys like that.
Okay.
Unfortunately passed away at a young age. When he passed away just when they created the first Static Shock action figure. And so,
really?
He saw the images of what that figure was going to look like in his hospital bed, and then he died. That story is brutal.
Yeah.
And I was about to tell you more, but then I kept it in. I just didn't say it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So I can't wait to do my Week in Dork on that comic, because it is 3 issues in, totally blowing my mind, totally beautiful, totally creepy.
How many issues total? Is the run done?
It's done. Yeah, it's a complete story.
Gotcha. Okay.
Looks like 10 issues, I'd guess.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're issues or if they're just chapters.
Okay.
They might be chapters.
I mean, it's a thick book.
Okay.
So but you should be done by next week, right? So our listeners can tune in next week.
Okay, so it's not something you have to wait for. You can get everything. Okay, that sounds good. Cool. Anything else you have for your Week in Dork?
I think I'm good. I think I've got it covered. We haven't been to the movies this week. We've been watching a lot of Boston Legal.
We have. I've been to the movies.
Yeah, he has. So Brad can take over.
So, Mr. Gullickson, Brad, birthday boy, what is your Week in Dork like this past week?
I started the week off on Monday going to the re-release screening of It Chapter 1.
Oh, I saw you. Yeah, I saw your letterbox.
Yeah. I still don't love that movie. That being said, I'm really glad that I went back and revisited it theatrically, and there's a lot about that film that I love.
Okay.
I think the cast is exceptional. I really like the kids. Although, Finn Wolfhard, for some reason, just doesn't work for me as Richie. But I'm excited to see Bill Hader tackle Richie in the sequel.
Did you read? Sorry to interrupt.
Did
you read the Stephen King novel?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So is that the reason why you don't see Finn Wolfhard? Did you know of that character, or?
Well, it's interesting. The 1990 TV miniseries is not good. All right, it's objectively bad movie or TV miniseries. But at the time I saw it, I had just recently read the book, so that was many years ago, 30 years ago, and I felt like those interpretations at the time felt like the interpretations of the book. Now, you go back and you watch that movie and you go whoa, what was I thinking as a kid? But those personalities, those performances did fit in my head. So Richie is that Richie, the 90 Richie.
Okay.
Ben is that Ben. John Ritter is that Ben for me. So even though again, it's go like, well, Brad, just let go of how because this movie's garbage. But that's what's stuck in my head. So yes, to answer your question, I have difficulty seeing new people in these roles.
Okay.
But get over yourself. I don't think that's why I don't necessarily love the film.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, what were the things about this 2017
The scares
version?
don't work for me.
Yeah.
Like, I love Skarsgård as Pennywise the clown and the makeup of it, but some of the CGI enhancements to the scares and to his face and to his body movements really don't work.
Okay.
You know, like, I know that the actor can make the eyes do that crazy thing in real life, but they do, you know, for example, the opening scene where Georgie gets his arm ripped off by Pennywise in the storm drain. When they light Pennywise's face in the storm drain, not when he opens up, just before that, when he's talking, he's like, "Hey, Georgie." And Pennywise's eyes are like bright blue, but they're lit in an impossible way. Now, it's done so that it's a creepy effect, but it's a creepy effect that just does not work for me. Like, I do not like the lighting on those eyes. And so there are like little elements like that throughout the film that bug me. One of the great scares in that film, in that book, which is not in the TV show, is when Bill goes down into the basement and he sees Georgie in the flooded basement, and Georgie's talking, and you start to realize that Georgie is a hand puppet on Pennywise. And in the film, he's positioned like a hand puppet. And if you look closely, George is definitely a puppet that's being manipulated by Pennywise. But they don't do a good job of really selling that grotesque idea of a boy puppet. And exactly.
That is a gross idea.
And so when you see the scene, you're like, oh, okay, that's it's creepy. It's a kid who's actually Pennywise, but it's a puppet boy, and I really want the puppet boy angle to be sold. Kind of like the way John Vernon is a puppet in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where the clowns are making John Vernon into a puppet, and he's got like those slits on his jaw, and it's disgusting. That's the puppet scene I want in Chapter 1. But whatever. Pennywise is great. The cast is great. The overall look, minus a few quibbles, looks. I really like the feel of it. Having just gone up to Bangor with Lisa on our 10th wedding anniversary, I think they do a solid job of recreating that town for Derry, and I love the idea in it that the poisonous evil that exists underneath the town is infecting everybody, and so that there's all these little evils that are occurring besides the clown. You know, when Ben is chased by Henry Bowers and his gang, and they start to carve Henry's name into Ben's stomach, and that car passes by, and they just look and just keep on going. Like that little evil, which is a very relatable human evil that we see all the time in this world. I think they do a great job of establishing that as an idea in Chapter 1.
Because that's an interesting thing, because those are some of my same issues with the first movie as well. But because I went back to rewatch it and I liked it a lot better, because I was going to ask you, was there anything like structurally or narratively that you found that you didn't like about it? But it's more so just the scares.
It's a little thing. I mean, I would, and I'm guessing by your question you kind of feel this way too. Is in removing the flashback structure of the book. You know, the book, it's like both timelines are happening at the same time. So this is like part 1 is the childhood, and then part 2 is the adulthood. I think that's a solid idea. But when you remove the flashback side of it, you remove this conversation that the book is having with the reader about how we remember our youth, and especially how we remember our youth when it is traumatic. And that element is missing from part 1, certainly, because it's all youth. I'm curious to see how that plays out in It Chapter 2.
Because I hear they're going to go back and forth in Chapter 2.
Right.
Okay.
And It Chapter 2 is 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's a long time. And It Chapter 1 is 2.5 hours. That's also a really long time.
That's interesting. Okay.
And the book's ending is not the most satisfying climax, and the TV movie ending is not the most satisfying climax. Is It Chapter 2 going to have the same unsatisfying climax as the book and the TV movie? Based on trailers, I think yes, but there'll probably be some alterations. I mean, there's definitely alterations in the new movie versus the old movie versus the book.
Yeah.
And looking at trailers, that seems to be the case. In fact, at the end of the screening of It Chapter 1, they had a scene from It Chapter 2 play.
Something that hasn't been seen.
That hasn't been shown before. They showed the scene from The Jade of the Orient, the Chinese restaurant sequence.
People talk about that scene. I don't know anything about that, so...
Well, I mean, the way it operates in the story is everyone's moved out of Derry after Pennywise incident, except for Mike, who's hung back.
Okay.
And because Mike is hung back, his memory of all those events is still there.
Yeah.
But everyone who's left Derry, the memory of Pennywise and all the evil, horrible stuff that they went through has faded. And so they all get letters to come back to Derry. Mike needs them. And they made a promise at the end of the first film that if Pennywise were to return, they would return. And so they are coming back to Derry, and they all reunite at this Chinese restaurant. And the scene that I watched is that reunion. And I got to tell you, James McAvoy's awesome. Jessica Chastain's awesome. They do a great job of translating those kid actors into these adult actors. It doesn't just feel like, oh, this is Jessica Chastain and this is James McAvoy. And then Bill Hader comes in as Richie.
Yeah.
And he's not the main kid in the story. Richie's not the main kid, but for whatever reason, he's like the kid that I always found interesting in the book and in the TV movie. Yeah. And I guess that's why I'm like, Finn Wolfhard doesn't work for me. But Bill Hader as Richie, perfection. And his reintroduction to the group is awesome. And a little different than it is in the book. And then that restaurant sequence plays out a little differently than it does in the book. The horror element is slightly altered.
Okay.
And I won't spoil it for you guys.
I'm so curious, man, because
I loved it.
I just went to see Good Boys, and they showed that trailer before Chapter 2, and that trailer just, seeing it on the big screen just hits you in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Especially when they show you the kid version and they juxtapose it with the adult versions. It seems like casting-wise, they nailed like having the adult versions embody like what we saw in It Chapter 1.
I love how they use Pennywise's giggle in that trailer.
It's perfection. It's really, really good. So I'm actually starting to get a little more excited for It Chapter 2.
Yeah, and that'll be out September 6th.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty soon.
We'll be doing that review cast real soon.
Yeah. Anything else you got?
I mean, like I mentioned at the start of the show, I have started watching Mindhunter Season 2. I watched all of Mindhunter Season 1. We started with Lisa. Lisa bailed out pretty early.
Because it was not good. I have a very discerning taste.
Yeah, Lisa did not like it. I love so much about the show, except for the main investigator. Not Holt McNally. Is that his name? Holt McNally? McNulty? Holt, shoot. I'm blanking on his name. But the guy from Fight Club. I love that guy, but the guy who plays the, for lack of a better word, eccentric detective who is really leading the idea of behavioral investigation, and the idea that in interviewing criminal minds, in interviewing maniacs, psychopaths, sociopaths, you gain an understanding and hopefully a way to spot and prevent future incidents. But he's clearly obsessed, and it's affecting his brain. And that film ended with a confrontation, or that season ended with a confrontation between him and the main serial killer of that season, Kempner, and who is like, I can't remember that actor's name either at the moment either, but he's great as the serial killer. Now, season 2 picks up from that moment, and it creates, he develops a panic attack. He develops that into his personality, and as Lisa, who suffers panic attacks on a fairly regular basis, I think she would really come down hard on the way panic attacks are presented in this show. And maybe some people experience panic attacks in this way. It's very much the Tony Stark Iron Man 3
I was going to ask about that. That's the first thing that came to mind was Iron Man 3.
And I'm sure they talk to people who experience panic attacks in that way, but that's not how Lisa experiences it, and that's not how I've experienced it through Lisa. So it kind of bugs me. And the way it's then used as a plot element to like, I don't know if we can trust this guy going out and doing interviews on his own because he's having panic attacks talking to serial killers. But I do want to say that I got to the episode. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I got to the episode where they interview Charles Manson, and it's the actor who played Dewey in Justified, and he also plays Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
But in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he has one scene and no dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And in this, it's post-arrest Manson. It's full crazy, X in the forehead, wild man hair, wild man beard, and his mental state is completely blown.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, well, I am blanking on everybody's name today. It's because I'm 40 and I have Alzheimer's.
No.
Give him a sword.
But he is so scary, and I would say that it's worth. This is stupid because this is such a privileged thing to say. It's worth watching all of Mindhunter to get up to this episode.
To that. Okay.
Damon Harriman.
Yeah, Damon Harriman. Damon Harriman.
Okay.
Who we saw at Sundance.
We saw him multiple times at Sundance.
He's petite.
Well, and Manson was a small guy. They called him the midget, right? Like he was, and he was very sensitive about his height.
Oh wow!
And so like, there's a moment where like they go at Manson using his height, and like Manson's response to being called a midget is great.
Oh, okay.
But I still don't empathize.
But you know what? Actually, here's the thing. I think you could actually watch this episode all on its own.
Okay.
And you'd get an idea of what the show's like.
Yeah. And
you want to go, oh, I want to live in this headspace or not. There is an element that they've introduced into the second season involving Holt's detective with his son that I rolled my eyes at. And I will not spoil that for anybody, but I was like, all this stuff's going on, and then this happens in his family. No, I just didn't like it.
Okay.
I don't want to go into it. I'll tell you guys off air.
Can I guess?
I mean, you can guess, but I will not respond because I don't want to spoil it for our listeners.
Not fun.
What's the time period of the show since they're interviewing Charles Manson?
I think it's early 80s, mid 80s.
Okay.
And there's also the through line of the BTK killer. They're aware of the existence of the BTK killer, and the audience gets to see what the BTK killer is up to, but they have not figured out who it is yet.
Gotcha.
So we're building to that confrontation as well.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, it's really well made. It looks beautiful. You know, David Fincher's producing it. And they've got a whole series of great directors on board. Anna Torv from Fringe is in it. I love Anna Torv.
He does.
And she's great in this.
Okay.
You like Anna Torv, too.
I do.
Yeah. You just didn't like Mindhunter, and I understand. It's definitely not a Lisa show, and I'm not sure if it's a Brad show.
And
I'm not sure if
got
it's a
comedy.
Brian show.
Yeah, I haven't started it.
Not in the second season. It's been VF.
Fringe?
No. Mindhunter.
Yeah. Fringe was vomit.
Fringe was vomit, yeah. That is pretty much it for my weekend dork. I'm still reading the Jonathan Hickman. Lisa's still reading the Jonathan Hickman X-Men comics that are going out every week.
Oh my goodness.
This last issue was nuts, but also like a huge info dump. And you're like, okay, well, before I read the next issue, I'm going to have to reread this issue to keep this all in my head.
Because interstitially in the comic, there are like these pages where you get the sense that you're reading from like a computer program or something. There's just white pages of text.
Okay.
And this issue ends encyclopedically in a way where I'm just like, well, I'm going to have this in my lap open as I'm reading the next issue because it gets like extremely technical.
All these definitions of what certain types of civilizations are.
There was way more math in reading this comic than anticipated, and the fact that that's not a turnoff is pretty great.
So I know you said there's two concurrently going, House of X and
Powers of 10.
And Powers of 10.
Also known as Powers of X, but it's a Roman numeral, and they're doing like a mathematical powers thing.
Gotcha.
It's it's some people could easily dismiss it as pretentious drag.
But I love pretentious drag. It's like, nom, 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 nom.
Okay,
Give me more of that.
It's not Bryan Singer's The X-Men, I'll tell you that much.
Well, that's a good thing.
So, yeah.
That's just drag.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I agree.
That's my weekend dork. Oh, my quote was from the movie Francis Ferguson, which just played at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester.
Oh, okay.
And is getting a larger release. And the director and the star of that film, Bob Byington and Kaylee Wellis, will be appearing on the In the Mouth of Darkness chatcast.
Wheeless.
The In the Mouth of Darkness chatcast in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday.
Okay. Next, not this one. Okay, next Wednesday.
Yeah. So the listener, it's not this Wednesday. That's
Yeah.
a different chatcast. You should listen to that as well. But then the last Wednesday of August, Bob Byington, Kaylee Wheelis will be on the show.
I was trying to get the exact date, but
Don't
I was
know.
like, I
think it's like the 28th, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Today is Sunday and it's the 18th.
We're not, I can't remember actors'
Math
names.
makes things fun.
No.
And I'm pretty good with dates,
No.
but I can't get
I
the
could
Wednesday.
I could look, but no.
But who gives a
well.
shit?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Happy
yeah.
Brian.
Yes.
How has your week in Dork been?
Mine has been pretty good, pretty decent. I mainly want to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about Good Boys, but I want to talk about a docu-series on Amazon called Free Meek. This is a docu-series. He's a rapper called Meek Mills, and it's basically telling his story. He was arrested, I think, in 2007, and they charged him with like 19 different counts. And he's been on parole for like 11 years. And the documentary is basically telling the story about how they use parole and probation almost as like another way of being in prison, like being imprisonment through probation. And to see his story and why he got arrested, and also why he's been on probation for 11 years is astounding. The corruption, as far as like the raid that happened that got him arrested, I won't go into too many spoilers if people don't really know about his story, but why he got arrested, and this was at the age of 19 when he got arrested, is mind-blowing. And the fact that it's just amazing. It's amazing to me that how the police could lie on this 19-year-old kid.
Have you seen When They See Us, Brian? I think
know,
you have.
and that's the incredible thing about it. It's like you watch a miniseries like When They See Us, and you look at the judicial system and the police corruption that happens with that, and then you look at this real life event that happened to this really famous rapper. Not even really at that time, but he came to his prominence within those last 10 years, and to see how from the early 80s or the late 80s when that story happened for the Central Park 5, and to his story in 2007, it's like nothing has progressed, nothing has changed. It's sad to see. And then you look at the court system, when you look at the judge that looked at his case and how he violated his probation, as far as like when he started to get signed by these different labels, and his probation would say, well, you can't leave the state, or if you leave the state, then we're going to bring you back in for violating your probation, or like all the little things that they would bring him in on the way he violated his probation. I mean, I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way that was done. And then when you look at the judge who was overseeing his probation, Janice Brinkley, who she was a piece of work herself. I mean, it amazes me how she became a judge in the first place. When you look at some of the stuff, like when you start to look at the things in her history and her backstory, and how she was basically using his fame and his celebrity to almost try to boost up her own type of celebrity.
Sure.
There was a moment,
gross.
there was a moment when she called him in for probation. He was dating Nicki Minaj for a little while, and she called Meek and Nicki back to her chambers, and she said, you know what, you should do a song, you should do a remix to a Boyz II Men song, and I want you to shout me out, or something like that. It's mind blowing. It's crazy. So I like hearing his story because it's telling these different stories about how the system has continuously been broken for black and brown kids all over the country. We've been seeing this in all different cases, and even
in every decade.
Yeah. And it's good to have like a lot of these high profile stories to kind of shed light on a lot of these kids that don't have a voice.
Well, I think we have to tell all the stories of all these injustices. Like when we learn them, we need to tell them, and we need to share them with people.
Absolutely. So
yeah,
I encourage people. It's 5 parts, not very long. They go from 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We this came up a little bit when we were talking about When They See Us, which is a very hard movie to watch. And so often we talk about important films, and when you talk to friends or family or whoever, that, you should really watch this movie, the response sometimes you get is like, yeah, but I mean, I know it's garbage. I know we live in a garbage world. Or
people go in with do I have the emotional energy?
I know I don't have time to find a time and place to feel ready to watch When They See Us.
Yeah. My whole thing with that, and it goes to a conversation I had with Darren, Disco Dork, who's not here, because I talked to him about it too, because I watched When They See Us right when it came out.
Yeah, I know you did.
Yeah, and it was a hard watch, and I was telling Darren, because sometimes he'll be a little reticent to watch certain things like that as well, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and watch it, because even though it may be something hard for me to watch, it was just as hard for those people to go through it. And if they could go through it, I damn well sure can sit for 5 hours and watch them tell their story as well.
Yeah, we owe it to them.
And that's how I feel, because I'll talk to people about When They See Us. I was talking to our Khan family about it when we were in line in San Diego, and I was like, this is something you guys, and they didn't even know about, and I was like, you guys definitely need to watch this. And it's a hard watch, but I think it's something important for everybody to see so they can understand what these stories are about, because even watching this Meek Mill documentary, there are people in the documentary who will say, well, you know what, I was going through, because they have investigators that went into looking into the police force and into this judge, and they're looking into the system, and they're like, you know what, I didn't even know that the system was this bad. So there's a lot of people who don't even know how bad the system is working against these black and brown kids. So still people out here who need to know this stuff, who have no idea or just refuse to even open their eyes to see how corrupt and broken the system is.
My strategy for watching reality, whether it's reality fiction or reality, documentary or what have you, like something like When They See Us, is watching, if I watch a series of really hard, depressing injustice stories, I definitely start to feel despairing. So to counter that, what I've been doing is watching uplift stories and finding documentaries or news items that show humanity in its finest. For me, I need to see I need to confront the awful stuff, because we don't confront the awful stuff, the shit's just going to repeat.
And the conversations aren't going to be had.
But I also need to know that there are people out there who are fighting the good fight and succeeding on some level.
It's interesting, because I was listening to a podcast, and they're 2 white guys, and they were talking about last year, a lot of the films last year that was this angry cinema, whether you're talking about Sorry to Bother You, Blind Spotting, The Hate You Give, and they were saying I forget exactly what he said, but he was like, the conversation on Green Book came up and how Green Book won Best Picture.
I'm staring at the Green Book poster now in the projection booth.
And it goes to all this cinema that came out last year that's trying to confront and talk about these real issues. But then you look at a movie like Green Book that is trying to do the same thing, but is doing it in a way to kind of make the majority or white people feel better or good about themselves.
We've progressed.
Exactly. I mean, when you have, a guy in what era was that? 1960s?
something.
But you have a white guy telling a black guy about fried chicken and Little Richard and soul music. It's
teaching him his culture.
Exactly. But it's just we need to get to a point where, and the guy that on the podcast, it's Collider.com podcast with, I think, Matt Goldberg and Adam Chitwood. And they were saying we're at a time when you need to watch cinema, because sometimes white people don't want to feel uncomfortable with that type of cinema, but he was saying it's time for white people to feel uncomfortable because he was like, well, just ask a black person.
I keep going back to what Kumail Nanjiani said at the Academy Awards a couple years ago. I think it was the year Moonlight won. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But, he's talking about representation, right? And we need every color. We need to watch the spectrum. Audiences should watch the spectrum. And if you're a white person and you're like, the spectrum doesn't interest you, just give it a shot. And what you'll discover is that you still empathize with humans, because I've been doing that my whole life. Kumail Nanjiani saying, because all he's been seeing are white stories, and he found ways to empathize with white people. We can find ways to empathize. White people like Brad can find ways to empathize with black and brown people.
Exactly, and that's really the biggest thing. It's just opening up that diversity, so we can experience these different type of stories, so we can see different perspectives like that. It shouldn't matter like if a white person who hasn't been engaged in black culture and don't know anything about the history, you shouldn't feel uncomfortable to watch a movie like Black Klansman. That should be something that can educate you.
Well, you should feel uncomfortable.
Well, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I said that wrong.
I know what you mean.
You should feel uncomfortable, but you shouldn't let that steer you away from experiencing cinema like that, because that can engage conversation, and you can also learn something from America's history.
Yeah. Watch more movies.
Watch more movies.
Watch more movies.
Absolutely. So
more kinds of movies.
Exactly. So definitely a documentary, docu-series. I would definitely highly recommend a lot of people watch. I'll end on Good Boys. Good Boys.
Yeah, Good Boys.
Let's end on a higher, lighter note. Good Boys was it was a fun movie. Of course, this is the movie, a rated R movie, that the kids that are in the movie are not even old enough to watch. But 3 sixth graders are basically going through these different type of hijinks and whatnot. But I found the movie to be extremely funny. It's okay, to say the least. I think really what attached me to this film was the chemistry between the 3 different kids. Especially seeing them in their different lives. One is like, he's like a song and dance theater kid. He wants to be in the next play of Rock of Ages. So he's like, but then he's embarrassed because there's this other kid that's bullying him and trying to take sips of beer. And so he says, I don't want to sing anymore. And then his friend, then Jacob Tremblay, is like, you've always wanted to sing. Like, just because this kid is, is teasing you, don't say that you don't want to sing anymore. And
now I'm suddenly in. I didn't know this was about a kid living their musical dreams.
Yeah, you would dig that. And then the other kid, Lucas, the black kid, man, they deal with such real stuff that kids go through. I don't want to get too much away, but his parents are going through a divorce. And him realizing, like, when his parents come to him and say, we're getting a divorce, and how he deals with that, and how he internalizes the divorce of his parents, and thinking, okay, is it me, or we're not going to be this family unit anymore. So it's dealing with a lot of these real world things, and also, like you were saying, Lisa, the naivete of these kids not knowing certain things at that age. When they mistake a sex doll for a CPR doll and things like that.
Both valuable things to learn on.
Exactly. But Jacob Tremblay was really good. And I like the theme and the message of, are we going to stay friends past this experience in our lives, or are we just friends because we live down the street from each other? I think that's something that everybody, as a kid and even as an adult, can relate to.
We were talking about this a little bit before we hit record.
Yeah.
You're still friends with a lot of the kids when you were young.
For me, like my friends, I've known them since 3rd grade, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them, and they have families of their own now, so we get together maybe every once in a while. We try to have different type of like game nights or go out or plan trips together, but we always try to remain close. But sometimes like those friendships kind of
Brad, I don't hang out with any of my certainly not my elementary kids, or high school or middle school.
Yeah.
Really, outside of getting a happy birthday from a Facebook friend or whatever.
Yeah. Facebook has kind of kept some of those connections.
Yeah. And that's cool. I mean, I do like that aspect of Facebook.
Yeah. But to have like those close-knit friends that you've had since 3rd grade, it's like, do you keep those type of friendships? I guess it just depends on
life
the
is
person.
life.
Life is life, man. You just never know. But yeah, definitely an interesting movie. So I definitely say I recommend to definitely check that one out. So that is our Weeks in Dork. Well, you know, when I host, we always have to go through the spiel. So you guys, comic book couples, I get this mixed up. I am so
You're
sorry.
so close.
There.
You're so
Comic
close.
Book Couples Counseling Podcast.
That's right.
Oh my God, I am so sorry.
No,
No,
you're
you
good.
nailed
I
it.
am
We
so-
are starting our series on sex criminals.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which
The
is,
comic book sex criminals, not just general sex criminals.
yeah, we're changing the direction of our podcast. Who's sex criminals?
Matt
by
Fraction and
I
Chip
knew
Zdarsky.
it. I should have never doubted myself.
Yeah.
And our love guru is Esther Perel, Dr. Esther Perel, and her book Mating in Captivity.
Yeah, so that should start next Monday. This week's episode is going to be a road trip episode, kind of similar to what you're listening to right now. And it's going to be about Blade. Because we didn't have time to record our first episode of Sex Criminals this weekend because of all the birthday shenanigans that were going on.
Okay.
So we're going to record our episode after our screening tonight in the car ride home. A little Darren and Brian method.
Yeah. And when will that be posted?
That'll post Monday. So while you're listening to this, you
Okay.
can hop on over to iTunes, Spotify, or
Podbean.
and listen to the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast episode on Blade.
Perfect. And also find them on Twitter at CBCC Podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for the plug, man.
And also, let's dive into Chatcast. What's on deck for Chatcast?
Okay, so we just last Wednesday we posted an episode in which we interviewed Chip Leposky and Adam B. Stein, who are the directors of the movie Freaks, which is coming out in theaters this fall.
Okay.
It's kind of like Slight or Fast Color, where it's an
Oh.
independent take on a superhero idea. It's basically like the low-budget X-Men. It stars Emile Hirsch and Bruce Dern. Both of them give really good performances, but the central performance is a young actress who's really good in the movie. And unlike a lot of... I loved Fast Color and I loved Slight. I liked
Okay, so you saw Fast Color.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this one introduces superhero comic booky concepts and delivers on them as well, which is always great to see how they do that on a low budget.
Nice.
And then the week after that, we are going to have our conversation with Clay McLeod Chapman, the author of the book Remaking, who is also just starting to write comics for Marvel. He did Absolute Carnage, Separation Anxiety, which just came out last week, and he is doing the new Scream spin-off series, the Carnage symbiote character of Scream, the female one.
Interesting.
And he's writing that. So he's out there promoting his book, which is coming out in October from Quirk Books, the Remaking. But I really just want to talk to him about Marvel Comics.
Nice.
Don't tell him that. That'll hurt his feet.
I've already started seeding that. He knows.
Nice.
I've been blowing smoke.
Fanboying
Yeah, I've been
him.
fanboying around with him.
Broing
with him? I don't know.
fan blowing him.
Oh.
I think that's what it's a mix between fanboy and blowing.
I've
him.
definitely been fan blowing. Which I want to do.
That's great.
And then we will be going to Fantastic Fest.
Yes.
And knock on wood, Brian, but I think a lot of those interviews that I do will be able to be posted on the Itmon Chatcast feed.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
So if you're not subscribed to that, friends, we see our numbers.
Yeah.
We know you have not.
And we know that Taika Waititi's coming.
Oh,
yeah?
man.
I just want to put that out into the air. I'm using the secret. It's on my vision board.
That would be a good get.
Yeah. So.
Oh, my
Do you
goodness.
think it would just be like 20 minutes of us sitting in a circle holding hands?
I hope so.
I don't think Taika wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all plays out.
So definitely make sure you subscribe and check out all the past episodes of It Mod Chat Cast.
32 episodes right now.
32 episodes. So if you haven't subscribed, you have a lot of catching up to do. So check that out on Podbean and iTunes and wherever you can find podcasts. Also, yes.
There's another interview.
Okay.
It's Richard Bates Jr. That's coming out before Clay McLeod Chapman.
Okay.
Richard Bates Jr. He directed Trash Fire and his new movie Tone Deaf, starring Robert Patrick, and that's coming out next Friday. And the movie is great. I loved it.
Okay.
And Robert Patrick is super cool in it.
Gotta love Robert Patrick, man. Last plug I want to do is for our buddy Bill. It is the Indie Dork. He has his podcast that has they took a little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah.
Bill and Claire's Excellent Adventures. I believe their latest episode is Billy and his daughter Claire are talking about Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
Yeah.
One of your favorite movies.
My favorite.
Your
movie.
favorite
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
So definitely go and check them out over there and follow them on Twitter as well. Their podcast can be found on Podbean and iTunes and everywhere podcasts are found.
If Claire didn't like Jaws, I was going to disown her as a friend of a friend. But spoilers, she liked Jaws.
There you go. There
She's
you
a cool
go.
kid. She's got taste.
Absolutely.
She's being raised right.
Yep.
Yes.
Unlike myself.
So you all can find Lisa at Sidewalk Siren on Letterboxd and Twitter and Instagram, and
That's right.
at Baked Dork on Instagram.
No,
and
I gotta be honest. If you're looking at Baked Dork, all you're seeing is some tumbleweeds.
Okay.
I have not been doing
Lots of retweeting going on.
a lot of retweeting over there. Well, Sidewalk Siren is where you can find her.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to this upcoming week, Lisa?
I'm scrolling through the Wikipedia entry for 2019 in film.
Okay.
Where'd You Go, Bernadette is out.
I'm hearing mixed things about
Yeah,
Here
I'm
it-
not feeling it.
Mix the terrible things.
Blinded by the Light, I really want to see.
that. Okay.
That one's out. After the Wedding is out. That's something that was our first Sundance film.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, we told you about it.
Okay. I saw
You
something
heard it?
recently about.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Well, that's because it's coming out right now. Peter
Okay.
Butter Falcon should be out.
Yes,
But these are all
yeah.
things where it's just like, can you find it?
Yeah.
Coming out next week, Official Secrets.
Yeah, we saw that at Sundance too.
Another.
Oh, wow.
It's good.
And that's it.
It's a fine film.
Yeah, not a lot.
From the director of Wolverine, X-Men Origins.
Oh, okay.
Gavin Hood.
Gavin
It's
Hood.
better than that.
Yeah. Hopefully, good. So, Brad, you can find Brad at Mouth Dork on all social medias: Untapped, Instagram, Letterboxd, Twitter. That's the one that keeps losing my mind. Twitter.
That's
Twitter.
my primary location.
That's his primary. So, look for him at Mouth Dork. What are you looking forward to this week?
Well, I'm really looking forward to Blade tonight.
Of course.
And then after Blade, still awesome screening we are going to be doing in September is Darkman.
Yes.
The Sam Raimi film from 1990. Love that movie.
Okay.
So I'm super stoked for that. This week, we're not doing a review cast because there's just not like a ton of things to get excited about, right?
I know.
The summer is over, guys, and I think it ended 3 weeks earlier than it usually does.
I know. I was thinking we could do our fistful of
We can.
Summer next week.
Pretty much, because
I mean, it's over. I think next week will be our fistful of summer.
Angel has fallen. You never know. Angel has fallen. You never know.
I mean, it could be on my list.
Look at his glass.
Yeah.
It's half full,
Super
guys.
half full. Super half
Yeah, maybe.
Super
full. Did you see London Has Fallen?
I did. I know you didn't really like that one.
Oh, man.
I had fun with it.
Did you? Okay.
I did.
All right.
I'm sorry. I did.
All right.
No
Well,
apologies
we don't
here.
have to do the fistful of summer if you want to hold
No.
out. on Angel's Fallen. Okay.
Believe me, it is no worries to me. For our dorks who aren't here, Billy Das, you can follow him at
WB Das.
WB Das. My bad. I'm so sorry. So sorry, Billy.
He's not listening.
Never apologize.
At WB Das. I say it all the time after my.
Well, you also called him Bill. I've never heard anybody call him Bill.
I think we should start calling him Bill.
I don't like
Hey, Bill.
I like that.
I like Bill.
Bill Clay from Die Hard.
Yeah. Just never do, when you see him, never say, "Oh, Billy." He does not like that. He does not like that Cable Guy reference.
Oh, man. Well, follow that guy at WB Dash on Instagram and Twitter. And also follow Darren the Disco Dork at the Disco Dork on all social medias. You can follow me at Brian William Young on Facebook, at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram.
And what are you excited about?
I guess maybe Angel Has Fallen. That's just a default for me because, like you say, the summer is over, and I don't know, nothing really. Maybe
I'm gonna watch that
docu-series, and that's right. Queer Eye. I'm gonna get it.
I'm so excited
because I did watch one episode. I think it was season 3.
Yeah, that's the first
so
season.
The opening.
That's what I'm talking about. So when you watch When They See Us and you're like, well, the world is garbage.
Yeah.
Go then and watch an episode of Queer Eye. And you're like, no, world has good too.
Yeah, because I enjoyed that one episode. It was the first episode was of the lady that was like a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And goodness, I can't remember. She used to always wear camouflage.
Yeah.
Was that this season or was that last season?
I think it was last.
It was last.
Season 4. Season 4 is the current season.
Yeah, so it was the first episode of season 3.
Yeah.
And I loved that episode. That episode was really
Dude,
good.
this season will blow your mind.
Okay.
There's like a specific episode that in my heart, I don't know if I want you to but I don't want to, blow my load early and then but I want to talk to you about this specific episode because, it was one where, right, the second the episode ended, I went and got Brad and watched it immediately again.
Okay.
That's how good it was.
That was in the current season?
It was. Yes.
Okay, season 4. Okay, I got a lot of catching up to do. So yeah, guys, that is this episode of the It Modcast podcast, and make sure you follow the podcast at It Modcast on Twitter, and that will do it for us. And I guess what does Darren say? Until next time.
Until next time.